Good evening, everybody. Are you prone, like me, to a mental breakdown sometimes out on that golf course? If you are, come back in a minute. I've got a few good tips for you. Good evening. Love that stuff. So first of all, let me apologise about the title. I know it's clickbait, but if you're only getting 300 people watching, then who cares? Let's go for it. I must be honest though, it is part of a strategy that I do use. And what do I use it for? Well, it's all about controlling the inner dialogue. Let me paint a picture. A lot of us are out there ruining basically every chance we have of playing well before we even get to the golf course, before we actually get up to the golf ball, if it's drawing around. From the moment that we send that entry form in, from the moment that we put down the phone after our mates called us to ask if we can play on Friday, it starts, this inner dialogue. And either, if we're lucky, we're getting really excited about it and we're looking forward to the event and we're thinking, God, I can go out there, play better, get my handicap down, win the tournament maybe. And if we're unlucky, then it's that cycle of fear, which is reminding of us of all the things that could go wrong. Handicap will go up, everybody will think I'm rubbish. I'm not going to fulfill my potential. I really need this. The kind of things which can go through your mind and go through all our minds on a regular basis. And the psychologists are really trying to get us into a kind of a perfect emotional level of excitement. Not so excited that we're actually stopping ourselves performing, but also not being undermotivated. And if you can kind of get to that point where you've got this kind of bubble in the side where you're excited about the thing, but you're under control, then that's the best place to be. But unfortunately, the inner dialogue sometimes will throw us such a curve, it's impossible to actually play as well as you're capable of playing, simply because you are trying to play through an emotional fog when you get up to the golf ball. You've had so many thoughts in your mind that they're getting in your way. So what I'm trying to do here is to give you kind of 3 strategies of things you can think about if you realize that your brain is going off on one and causing an emotional imbalance, either before the round or after the round. What do we have to do? Well, the first thing is basically get yourself a piece of paper and then divide it into 3 columns. And I want you to basically write in these 3 columns what I would call, the first one you could call killer, the second one you would call is kind of middle of the road, and the third one are kind of long burners. That's what I call them at any rate. The killer is a thought, a train of thought, which stops any other train of thought in its tracks. So if you are really kind of going off on one, oh my God, it's not going to work, or what happened there, I'm losing it, I can't feel my swing, these kind of things, you need something which just stops that line of thought immediately. And Jennifer Aniston was always capable of doing that for me. As a young man, I think we all watched Friends, or I did at any rate, and thought she was incredible. And I actually used a mental strategy where I imagined Jennifer Aniston running naked across a fairway. And that seemed to stop any kind of pattern of thought that I had in my brain at that time. Now, if you're a lady, you might want to think of Tiger Woods. But if you are looking for something to just simply stop that train of thought in its tracks, it's got to be something emotionally based. Something which you really care about. I'm not saying I care about Aunt Jennifer, but something which will actually stop your going along that other kind of emotional road of fear and negativity. Unfortunately, that kind of a thought process is only kind of short term. It will stop you for a second, but these old thoughts will come back into your head in no time at all. And the trick is to get a long burner in there. A long burner is a train of thought which is really interesting and needs time. I'll often use books. If I'm reading a book at the time, I will try and kind of regurgitate it over the round. What's happened, what's happening, what's likely to happen, what do I think it's all about, what are the scenarios that I could come up in my own brain. As you can see, you always want to be looking for something which is interesting to you. It's got to be almost more interesting than the misery that you think you're in, because you're not in any misery. There's no reason why you can't hit the golf ball. You're going to be able to hit the golf ball if you can just get yourself to your pre-shot routine in some kind of emotional balance. And that's really the big trick here. So what we're looking to do is to get kind of three different trains of thought. You've got your killers, which are basically very highly charged emotional thoughts that you can use to stop a train of thought you don't like. You've got your long burners, which are things that you can think of almost for hours on end because they really interest you. And we can talk about books, movies. Sometimes it's a bit of tech that I've been thinking of buying for a long time, and I just haven't really kind of got over that kind of pain barrier where I'm prepared to put the money on the table. And I'll go through all the positives and negatives of buying that bit of gear. And that works really well for me. And then you've got your kind of middle of the road things that sometimes, if you can't get straight into this long pattern of thought, will help you because they're more here and now. Usually they're kind of things you're going to be doing in the next 24 hours to 48 hours. It could be a visit to the cinema, it could be a meal you're going to cook, it could be a trip out, something which actually does require our attention and to a certain extent has been put on the back burner because you're going to play golf. And these are kind of things which again are interesting to the brain. The brain knows it's got to actually do something about it, and therefore they're kind of short-term decisions. So if you can imagine you're getting into a really bad place on the golf course, and first of all you hit it with a killer thought which just stops that train of thought, and then you go into, now what was it I was going to do this evening, because if I don't do that correctly, this and this will be the consequence. And then once you've actually got out there and you're far enough away from that kind of first emotional feeling that you were having, then you pop in a nice slow burner and say, okay, well, I've decided what I'm going to do this evening. Well, what was happening in that book? It was, oh God, it was in such a great place last time I was there, and then kind of hop into that and try and keep that train of thought until you actually get up to the ball to make your next shot. I know that sounds a little bit kind of out there, but you can believe me, it does work. And if you're having problems with these thoughts between shots rather than over shots, if you find yourself getting to your ball, trying to get into your pre-shot routine and simply not being able to get there because of this kind of emotional fog that you've got to get through first, then this is the way to go for you. Sometimes you can use your colleagues, or your friends who you're playing with. I mean, there's enough people out there who could, talk the hind leg off a donkey. And if you've got somebody like that, then talk to them if that's your thing. Personally, it's not mine. And I find in professional golf, we all tend to like to kind of do our own things. There might be a little kind of swapping of thoughts, but it's not the same as kind of a hobby golfer on the round. And sometimes the hobby golfer has an advantage there because you're actually able to think about something else, talk about politics, talk about, things that are going on in your own life today, which are probably more interesting and more important, most certainly, than whether you actually hit the next ball on the green. But this is basically the idea of the thought processes that you can use to control your round. And of course, then when you get to the golf ball and you're going to make that pre-shot routine, you're in emotional balance and you're not having to fight to do it. You go basically into your routine, make your decisions, carry out the shot, come back out, pick a nice, pleasant train of thought and then use that until you get to the next shot. I know a lot of people may think, well, this might get in the way of your strategy, but it really doesn't. I mean, if you know in advance how you're going to play the golf course, then you'll know more or less by every shot before the pre-shot routine. If you're having to make changes to your strategy on the round, then okay, then stop thinking about it maybe a couple of minutes before you get to the golf ball, so you can just make a decision. Maybe it's a different club, maybe you're going to take a different line, make a different shape to the shot than you were actually preparing to do in the first place. But generally, it's all about getting to that golf ball with some kind of emotional stability and confidence about what you're going to do. And in order to be able to do that, you've got to have been controlling your thought processes. And if you think about it, you're on that round for over 4 hours, and that's if you're lucky in Germany. It can go even longer. And for that whole time, you're hitting a golf ball for what? Tops 30 minutes. So you've got 3.5 hours of mumbo jumbo. And if this mumbo jumbo is getting in your way, then it's going to make playing the game as well as you know you're capable of more difficult. Again, another one a little bit out of the left field. I hope you liked it. If you did, as ever, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, then please do that. I'll leave a PDF with my philosophy up here if you want to click on that and see basically my thoughts on this great game. As ever, it was nice talking to you. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers, have a good evening.